Hi, also welcome to the new series on web development using Python Flask. So in Python Flask, we are going to learn what is Python Flask, uh, how it is used, and why it is used. And with the help of Python Flask, we are going to develop different web applications. So we will be able to define our UI, and with the UI, we will be able to communicate with our Python code. And with Python code, probably we will be using MySQL that we have used in past two series. So with Python Flask development, we are going to define a UI, and with UI will be communicating to our Python program, which is going to in turn communicating to MySQL for fetching the data or communicating to the data. So in this series, we will try to understand like how this entire end-to-end workflow happens and how these three different things are going to work together, right? So before starting and understanding the different things, let's understand how internet work and what is Flask and why it is used, right? So to understand how internet work, what happens, uh, let's say this is our application. This is our application. Let me clear it again and try to make it new one. So let's say this is the application. That means the server where you have deployed your application. So this is your server where you deployed your application. It may be a banking application or any other application that you have. Right now, this is called as your client. So client is nothing but your local PC, your computer, where you open the browser, and with the help of browser, you are trying to access any website or any application which is available. Now, how these two things communicate with each other? So these two things communicates with each other over internet. So this is your internet. Now, how the things works in total is the moment you type a URL www.xyz.com. So what will happen with www.xyz.com? This particular request is going to travel through internet, and after traveling through internet is going to try to identify like where xyz.com exists or where xyz.com is hosted. So internet will come to know that xyz.com is hosted on this particular server. So let's route to this server because there will be multiple server or there will be multiple areas where different websites will be hosted over the internet. So this is the website where we have to come. So this is the website where the internet by using this URL you are going to come here. Now to respond to the request which came from this side, we have to have some programming done here. We have to have some programming done here, which is going to decode whatever being written and then perform the task. Right. So let's say on www.xyz.com, as soon as you log in, after login, you see some login page comes in, and on login page you have to enter your user ID and you have to enter your password. So user ID and password. This is the request which is going to come up, which says that hey, www.xyz.com. This is my user ID and this is my password. Let me get into the website or let me get into my account. So this particular logic is written at server side where xyz.com is going to identify the logic, and it is going to verify whether the user ID and password are registered with it or not, and if they are registered, then whether they are valid or not. So this kind of logic is written at server side. Now the languages in which the logic is written at server side, they are called as server side languages, SCL, server side languages. So server side languages are the languages where the logic of the code which is written at server is written. So these are called as server-side languages. However, there are some code which is going to be at the client side as well, which is going to define like how the UI is going to look like, or those things which are not so confidential. They are written at the client side. So that is written in client-side languages. So there are two type of languages. One is server-side language, and another one is client-side language. All right, so these are the two different languages. Now in server side languages, what we are doing, so in server side languages, most of the confidential logic or maybe the complex logic is written like login and password, or maybe connecting to the database server, fetching the data from database server, so on and so forth. So this kind of logic is written at server side languages. Normally you would have seen Java and PHP, .NET, These are some server-side languages. And now, if you are in the Python era, so if we want to use the simplicity of Python and try to do web development using Python, then the server-side language is written. The server-side language is written in Python Flask as well. So Python Flask and Django are two server-side languages from Python, or two server-side languages at Python stack, right? So Flask and Django are server-side languages and which are going to handle this sort of logic. However, on client-side languages, the popular one is JavaScript, you would have seen, or HTML. So these are something who are client-side languages, right? So we are going to look in detail what is Python Flask and how we can define different logic at server side in the upcoming discussions. So this was about introduction to Flask, and now next discussion onward we will try to understand how we can code Flask coding, how we can code programs in Flask using PyCharm.